All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I said, today is Jaspersoft HTML5 charts for our session today. My name is Jake Brown. I am a customer success engineer with for Tibco, more specifically on the Jaspersoft product line. So just a quick overview of what our agenda is going to be today. First off, we're going to discuss what exactly are these HTML5 charts and kind of the differences between them and our basic charting options that are available to you. Why use these HTML5 charts over the basic charts? Just a quick slide about a license disclaimer for the use of these HTML5 charts. We'll do a fairly quick demo. Given the availability of all the charting options in HTML5 charts, it was going to be quite difficult to cover a good majority of those. So we'll do something fairly quick that gives an idea of how to use and integrate them. We'll open it up to our Q&A at the end, as we always do, and then just a final slide on the resources made available for this particular presentation today. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So what exactly are these HTML5 charts? So the HTML5 charts are similar to the basic charts in that they're a charting library. The biggest difference being that these HTML5 charts are interactive. So these HTML5 charts are actually built off of the HiCharts API library that's available. So Jaspersoft and HiCharts have a relationship with one another where we embed their library into our software. So here's an example. This is just the HiCharts.com/demo section on their website. But if any of you are interested in learning more particularly about HiCharts, since the majority of their properties and settings you can find in their documentation or in their examples, I would encourage you to go look out here if you're curious in that. But real quick, you can see that the HiCharts library provides a fairly extensive list of different charts. You can see we have several different line charts, as well as some area charts, your standard bar and column, as well as your pie. But then we also get into things like these scatter charts and these bubble charts, which aren't quite as nice in the J-free version of the basic charts, even if you are available to make them. One of the other nice things is that you can do combination type charts with this API. It also gives you some better styling options, and there are a couple of kind of one-off type charts that you don't really see made particularly very often, but they are available to you. And then we also have these gauge type charts, which we've started to add more support for, which I'll talk about in a minute. These heat maps and tree maps are also kind of popular and gaining steam among our customers. Let's go back to the slides now. So as I mentioned, HiCharts are interactive, are built off of an interactive JavaScript library made available. The HTML5 charts are made available by HiCharts. So there are two ways that you can develop these HTML5 charts through Jaspersoft. The one way is Jaspersoft Studio, which is what we're going to look at mostly for right now. But these charts are also available, and the only charts really available to use in the ad hoc designer. So the ad hoc designer is always going to resort to an HTML5 version of the particular chart that you're trying to make. Other than it having an advanced settings property to be set for it, where several properties can be set, the building of these HTML5 charts in your ad hoc designer works the same as you would build any other chart in the ad hoc designer from a data design standpoint. All right, let's go to the next slide. So then that asks, why would you use these HTML5 charts? The simplest answer to that is you have some sort of either requirement or just a desire to make your charts more attractive and modern looking. As I said, the basic charts, which are based on the JFree library, are quite dated. They're a bit old, and their presentation shows that. One of the other reasons is the JFree charts doesn't have the particular chart you're looking to build in it, and the HiCharts API could. Another reason is just continuing support and current trends. So TIBCO is a lot more invested into improving and making the experience with HTML5 charts better, just because of the advantages that we've previously discussed, as well as the partnership between HiCharts and the ever-evolving use of it and additions and improvements to it. The final reason would be more advanced styling options. So the styling options are quite a bit more extensive in the amount of properties that you can set in the HTML5 library as opposed to the basic charts. Real quick on a disclaimer here about the license. So for those of you here, this is mostly for the attendees we have who are using a community version of Jaspersoft. HTML5 charts are a feature of using a commercial or a professional license. So if you already have that, you already have the ability to create these charts. If not, the community users would be required to upgrade their license or obtain a license to use these HTML5 charts. If we have anyone who is in that situation and is interested in getting a license to use these, they can feel free to follow up with us at our drjasper@tibco.com email, and we'd be happy to point you in the right direction and get you set up with the right people for that. So let's go into a bit of a demo here and have a look at these. So first off, I want to go over to my local Jaspersoft server here while I have some samples set up. And let's go ahead and first have a look. This is just going to be one of our JFree charts using the basic charting library. So as you can see, the chart certainly gets the job done as far as giving you data and displaying it. What we have here are just store IDs with our sample data. So they just go 1 through 24 in this case. And then we have the amount of sales here on the left. So you can see that they're kind of old looking, pretty basic, nothing too special with them. There's no interactivity when I hover or when I click on anything. Although these do support hyperlinking, there isn't much functionality outside of the hyperlinking as far as interactivity goes. So now let's go ahead and have a look at another one of our samples here. So this is kind of similar to the other chart, except this is the HTML5 version. Now, intentionally, I've left it a little bit gray and a little bit dull looking, just so we can come back and modify it and see how to change the properties some. But what we have here is simply a state filtered list of stores, and then they're by city, that is, and then the sales and cost associated with each of those. So let's go ahead and jump into this particular chart, and we will go ahead and modify it a bit and take a look at some of the properties associated with it. So this is the chart. And first off, let me just go ahead and show you the data and have a look at what exactly we're working with, just so make a little bit more sense here. So I'm going to point it over to the correct data source here. And simply what we're doing is we're getting the store city, the sum of all the sales, and then the sum of all the costs for the stores in that city. Now, another thing that we're doing here, just to make this chart a bit more manageable and easier to read, is we're filtering it by a particular state as well. So we'll go ahead and filter that by a state when we go to execute it. If we run just a quick preview data here, you can see that our data is pretty straightforward and we're only getting those 3 fields. All right, so this can be done either during the chart creation wizard or after the fact, but the first thing we did here is we selected a multi-axis column chart to create. And as you can see, we've got a pretty extensive list of charts here. The one thing I do want to mention is that HiCharts library obviously gets updated on whatever scheduled basis they update their product on. Jaspersoft has to QA the charts that they're putting out and how they interact with our software in particular. So we may be a version or 2 behind on the current HiCharts library, depending on which version of Jaspersoft server that you're using. So please keep in mind that some charts may take a little bit more time to bring over. The gauge charts are something that we've had to put some effort into translating nicely. So as far as the data structure for this chart, since we're building a column chart, we're really only going to use the category here. And the category is simply the store city. And then we have 2 measures, one for sales and one for cost. Now, the first thing I'm going to look at from a formatting standpoint is I don't like the colors for this chart. So for those of you who are familiar in general about Jaspersoft Studio usage, you're probably familiar with our expression builder. So in this particular case, we were able to define a list of hex colors that the chart should use based on a Java expression that we gave it. Now, this is one way that you can pass colors if you have a predefined set list. However, you don't have to use an expression. You could certainly uncheck that. And then this is our default color palette that's provided to you. You could certainly change the order on this or define your own colors. So one nice feature that we do have when you're in the chart designer here is we have the show chart preview option, which opens up another window for you, which gives you a mini version of the chart that's going to be created. So we can make changes here in the settings and then do a preview and refresh that as needed. So the ability to use a predefined set of colors is fine. However, let's say that I want to do this on a measure level, and I want to do it based on the particular data. For example, let's say I want the sales to be green and the cost to be red, rather than having this auto assign a color set for us. So one thing you have is a set of properties for these measures that you don't get with our basic charts. These properties associate to the HiCharts API, which if we go and have a look over here, you can see here's a list of all the properties, and they have nested levels here as far as what you're setting. But all of these properties translate to a property in Jaspersoft Studio and vice versa here from the API documentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over into the sales measure here. I'm going to go to the advanced properties, and I'm going to add a property here. Now, we need to look at a few things here as far as the contributor. So the contributor, this first one here is for hyperlinking advanced functionality. So that's not what we're going to be using right now, but that is available. The next option is what we call a series item property. So this is when you want the property to apply for just the items in the series, whereas the series property itself would be for the entire series of that data. So in this particular case, we're going to go ahead and take a series item property. The particular property that we're looking to set is just the color, which could be looked up to find it, but I already know what I'm looking for. And then since we're doing these sales, I'm simply going to give it a constant value of the basic colored green. Now we could use measures, or we could use a bucket to set this property. We'll go into the buckets here shortly. Also, just because again, this is Jaspersoft, you have the ability to use an expression and evaluate data or evaluate a variable to determine what color you may potentially want to use here. I'm just going to use a constant, and then I'm going to click OK and refresh my preview. And you can see now that this is set, it's overwriting the colors that I've set in the palette here. And since I've set this on a more granular level to the measure of data, it's ultimately taking my measure advanced property. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here for the cost. And I'm just going to give it the simple color red and re-preview. So now you can see that we're easy to distinguish between the sales and the cost in this case. All right, so another thing, let's say that we want to work with the hyperlinking here so that when you click on either of these bars for this particular city, we want it to hyperlink out to some city level information. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to go into the category here first and create a bucket. Now, the reason that we need to create a bucket is due to the way that Jaspersoft's data sources organize and present this data in these charts and how they use it for advanced properties. So for example, if I tried to hard code an expression here for my hyperlink to say just use the field value, it's always going to take the last field value due to the way that Jaspersoft compiles this data and presents it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go into the store city, we have bucket information, and then we have some bucket properties. So this bucket property allows you to essentially map this data correctly. So what I'm going to tell it is I'm going to create a property called city URL, and I'm going to make an expression to generate this city URL for my hyperlinking. Now, the URL I'm going to make in this case, just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to have it go out to the Wikipedia page for the particular city in question. So we should be able to create a static URL like that out to Wikipedia to do a search. And then in this particular case, we're just going to give it the field store city, since that's going to be dynamic based on which particular bar we're clicking on here. So I'm going to click finish, OK, and OK again. So now my bucket property should be ready. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into my measures. I'm going to go over to my advanced properties again, and I'm going to add another property here for my hyperlinking. So I'll click add. And in this particular case, this is a series item hyperlink. I want to hyperlink the particular item in this series, which is this bar. The property name here is going to be, just one second. We want to use a bucket value, and we want to use this store city URL. And click OK. Whoops. All right, so now let me go into the cost. And actually, you know what? I'm sorry. It ultimately creates it in the advanced properties, but there's actually a hyperlink set up for us. So let me do this the correct way. Let me go into the edit hyperlink. And then I simply have to check this use hyperlink. So it's going to auto-generate some of these properties for us. I'm just going to tell it to go ahead and update yourself. And in this particular case, this is a remote anchor since it's out to Wikipedia and not in a web application that I already have embedded. And then this is where I'm going to set my bucket value, which is my city URL, storecity.city URL. And I'm simply just going to do the same thing over here in the anchor section as I did in the reference section. Okay. So now if I refresh my preview here and click on Beverly Hills, you can see that my page is redirected to a Wikipedia page for Beverly Hills. Let me go ahead and refresh this again. Okay, now similarly, you could do the same thing for the cost here so that the bar for the cost redirects you to the same place. However, you may have a need to separate those and do something different, which is fine. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the styling features that you can use. So as it stands right now, let me just go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to do a quick publish out to my server so we can view it there. So if I refresh this, we should have an updated chart now from what we had previously, which we do. So one thing that these HTML5 charts provide that the basic charts do not are this level of interactivity. You can see that we get a tooltip when we hover. That tooltip is customizable. It can display an expression or static text or whatever you'd like it to. The other thing we have is a legend here, which this legend is interactive. If I'm only interested in looking at the sales, let's say, even though the chart has given me both, I can interactively filter out what I want to see here as far as the measures and the series go. So let's have a further look at the legend. So the legend is also something that you can customize. So for example, let's just say that I don't want the legend on at all. I could simply go over to the legend here and just toggle to turn it off. So now, if I preview this chart, I should have no legend, which I do. So another thing that you can do is in the chart formatting, we have a button here called Show Advanced Properties. So when you click on that, this is going to give you essentially this, what we looked at earlier, how you have kind of a nested list of properties here, and they all correlate to something with that chart. So you get the same thing over here. Now, to help you out to see what you've already edited, you can certainly click this and you can see where we've set a zoom type. This is defaulted, by the way. That's the default zoom that Jasper sets out of the box, which you can change. We did set a colors palette for it. This is just kind of some default markup for the credits that we've turned off. You can see that we've disabled our legend. We've given it just a generic or blank title. And y-axis here, but this is a way to evaluate which properties you've already set so you can see, easier in the future what properties correlate to what. However, you do have the ability also to search for them. So if I just put a star there and then search for legend, you can see that I can find all of my legend related properties quite easily in this search and modify them as needed. So let's go back to the simple properties. And then you could do something as simple as, hey, I would like to invert the chart. And you can see now that we have more of a bar versus column in this case, but at the selection of an option here, we can switch that and invert it. I'm gonna go ahead and set it back. So those are some properties of a fairly simple bar chart and how it looks compared to a, one of our basic charts that we started with. So the next thing I'm going to spend a little bit of time on is a combination type chart. And what I mean by combination chart is that we have multiple chart types combined into one chart. So high charts allows us to do this, or excuse me, the HTML5 charts allow us to do this pretty simply, both with your chart types and with your series properties. So let's have a look at this chart as well. So if I go into the chart properties, let's have a look at the specific chart type that we've selected. So we've actually selected a combination type chart called a column spline. It expects at least a few different measures from us, since it expects us to use a combination of a spline and a column. There are some other options that you can use, but they've decided just to name it this way. So really quick, after we've seen the chart type, now let's go have a look at the data that we're working with, just so it makes a bit more sense. I'm simply going out to one of our sample databases, and I'm just doing a general select all from orders statement. Let's have a quick preview of what our data looks like. I believe that's the correct endpoint. Let's try. And we may not get any data because we may have some sort of weird filter applied to it. Yes, okay. Sorry about that. So what I've done, and this is going to limit our data preview options, but this particular select all from orders had a lot of data associated with it. So I've simply applied a filter expression to only give us countries that begin with these particular sets, so I could limit the result set for us so it was easier to see. So let's go back to the combination chart properties here. For a category, I'm using I've called it country, but my field is actually ship country. I don't want it to go in any particular order. If you could sort that alphabetically, but in this case, I'm not looking to do that. So I've set none for the order. We don't have any bucket properties in this particular case. Now, I would like to create a series to group these measures together. So not only would I like to get the freight value and the amount of total orders, I also want to see it on a year-by-year basis grouped. So for the series, I'm going to create an expression, and I'm simply going to write a Java expression to give me my order date that I have that contains a full date and time value. And I'm just going to write a simple date format expression to give me only the 4-digit year in this case. So this will narrow it down to a 4-digit year and allow my grouping to work much better. Since this is going by year, I was interested in sorting it, and I chose to sort it in ascending order. Again, no bucket properties in this particular example for this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to our measures. So this is going to be a count of freight values. So what I've done here is I've created a label just to label it freight so we know what we're looking at. Since it's a measure, it's asking what kind of calculation are you looking to do here. Please keep in mind you don't have to do a calculation. You can always select nothing. But in this particular case, I was looking for a count since my query did not already give me aggregated data, and I'm having to aggregate it myself in the HTML5 chart. The value expression is simply what am I doing the count on? And in this particular case, it's the freight field. I want this to be an integer in this particular case, but if I was interested in having it be a decimal, that's not a problem. And then what I need to do now for an advanced property, since I'm working with a combination chart, the chart needs to know what kind of charts are you looking to create for this particular measure. So what I'm looking to do, and again, this is a series property since this applies to the entire series of data and not just the particular items inside of it, is there is a property type called type, and this is simply for the chart type. I'm just going to use a constant value since I'm never going to be using some logic to dictate whether this is going to be a column or a spline. It's always going to be a column in this particular case. And then I will click OK, and that measure is complete. Now let's kind of fly through the total orders measure here. Again, I'm just giving it a label. I'm telling it I want a distinct count, so don't count duplicate order IDs. And that's the particular field, the order ID that I'm looking to gather. And then the value class here is an integer. Again, we only are going to be setting one advanced property in this case, and that is going to be a type. And in this particular case, I want this to show up as a spline rather than a column. So let's preview this chart. And you can see that we now have a combination of both columns and a spline or a line, however you want to say it, filtered on these countries. And this data is showing us distinct counts of orders and freight values. And in this particular case, they just happen to line up equally. So your data may look different depending on the country and the particular orders, but in this case, this is just how this particular data turned out. So let's go ahead and just republish this real quick and go have a look at it inside of Jaspersoft server and not necessarily just from the preview and studio here. And again, you can see that, let's say I'm really not interested in 1996's data. The legend makes that very easy to remove and to add back and to further customize. Now, another thing that you can do is you can allow the user to switch the chart type if they don't like the particular chart. Now, maybe this combination chart may not be a great example just because it's a little bit more complex as far as what you need to add to it. So let's go take a look at one of our other charts here just to show that. So the simplest example here would be we're currently using a column. I would like to switch it to a bar. And you can see that it easily adapts to that and updates to it. A stacked column. So if you don't want the values side by side and you'd rather have them stacked, that's very easy to set and to change just with a few clicks for your users. Now, please keep in mind that this is an optional property. There is a setting on your Jaspersoft server that allows you to disable the selection of these chart types so your users don't have the ability to do that if that's not desired. All right. So that is going to do it for our demo here today. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A session now. So let me go have a look over here at the Q&A and see if we have anything. We do not yet. So I'm going to allow the audience here a couple of minutes to submit any questions that they might have. But meanwhile, I'll move on to the last few slides that we have. So just a simple resources slide here. We always include our customer success orientation URL. So this is if you're interested in obtaining a customer success help. So that would be my team and our team of customer success managers and the other customer success engineers who are able to give you guidance and some demos for things like this. If you guys have questions after the fact and you can't think of them for this particular session in time, please go out to our community.jaspersoft.com/answers website. So this is just a community website for Jaspersoft users and Jaspersoft employees to post and answer questions. If you do have a particular question from a Dr. Jasper session, please use the hashtag Dr. Jasper, and we'll make a note of that. We do have the Jaspersoft Quick Start Guide as well, that we always offer, which is just a good general starting point for getting started with Jaspersoft for anyone on this session who may be completely new. And then as far as links from the presentation from today, we really don't have many. We always list the edelivery.tibco.com website because this is where you can go download Jaspersoft Studio or Jaspersoft Server. And then in this particular case, we really just had one external URL or internal to Jaspersoft community still. But this is going over just basic examples of how to create some of these interactive HTML5 charts. All right, so let's go ahead and see here. So how easy is it to use MongoDB as a source database? So Rajesh, I'm assuming that you're referring to using MongoDB simply as a data set and not the database that the Jasper server repository needs to function on. So I'm going to make that assumption. Please let me know if you're actually looking to use it as the repository database that stores all of the Jasper metadata. But we do have some information out there, and I do apologize because I wasn't really expecting a MongoDB question for this session. But we should have a community article because I know that we've had several customers who've asked about this. So let me see if I can find you something very quickly. Okay. So let me go ahead and link you to this just so you can have a look at it. Let me see here, where the typical chat option, there it is. And we'll send this to attendees as well. So there is a particular piece of information about MongoDB. Let's see if this, yeah, so here's also a getting started for it. So I'll send you this as well. If you have any further questions, we'd be more than happy to follow up with you. But that is the MongoDB that I have available to me right now. And it's been a bit since I've opened one. So, or used a MongoDB connection for that. So I'm a little rusty. So, yeah, so Rajesh, sometimes we do have some compatibility issues with some of these. So I would have to check our platform support document and then, you know, compare that with the version of Jaspersoft server that you're using as well. But we do, on some of these connections, have a limited scope of support. We do kind of our best to get them up and working, but if they're not officially listed under the platform support, it's kind of a best effort attempt. If you have a particular setup that's not working for you in use case, the best I could suggest for you at this particular moment is to email us Dr. Jasper at tibco.com, and if we can't answer it for you, we'll certainly get you pointed in the right direction to have that answered for you. All right, let me see. All right, so I see that there are no other questions coming in. So with that, and yes, yep, we will be in touch, Rajesh. Thank you. So with that being said, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we do apologize. I know that we had kind of a last minute reschedule due to some internal processes and some things that we have working on here at the Tibco side. So we did kind of pull together this session with less notice than we wish to have given you all, and we do apologize for that. However, if you have any suggestions or comments or any follow-up to this session, again, please feel free to email us at the drjasper@tibco.com email address, and we'll be happy to follow up with any of you there. Our next Dr. Jaspersoft session will be held July 9th next month. Easy to remember, just the second Thursday of every month for these sessions. And next session should be an in-depth look at Visualize.js. And with that, I'm going to check our QA here one last time and make sure we've got nothing else. All right, so that is going to conclude. Oops. Yeah, yes, Rajesh. So the recordings are made available. We do have a Dr. Jasper landing page. So let me go ahead and pull that up. So the landing page here, we should be posting links out to the content that we're creating. And then we have a YouTube channel as well. So let me see if I can get that for you really quick. Whoops, not there. So this is a particular session. However, if you go over to just this channel in general, we should have.
I feel like people using your application are asking you to pull a rabbit out.
All right, autoplay on YouTube for the win. All right, so let me send that out. So it may take a couple of days for the marketing team to get around to posting this. And if after a few days you don't receive it, again, please reach out and we'll be more than happy to share that with you. Summit, I'm not sure, we can't use special characters in Jaspersoft Studio. Please send us an email of your particular use case, and I'd be happy to look at that. Unfortunately, there's a bit involved with that for me to troubleshoot it in this particular session. But that's something you should be able to use special characters in Studio, whether or not you're escaping them in a string or what particular property you're trying to set that on. That's a bit involved, but if you're willing to email us your particular use case, we'd be happy to look at it and get back with you. All right, that is going to conclude our session for this month. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your participation and your attendance, and we'll see you for next month's session. Take care.